I found out my neighbor had been using my private dock space for 3 months when I came home early from a business trip and saw her pontoon boat tied up to my slip like she owned the place. My name is James Zhu, and I had bought my waterfront condo in Lake Norman, North Carolina, specifically because it came with deeded dock space. The property was expensive, partly because of that prime lakefront access, and I had paid a premium for slip number 7, which was positioned perfectly to catch the afternoon shade. I worked in tech consulting, which meant I traveled frequently, but when I was home, nothing beat taking my small fishing boat out early Saturday morning or just sitting on the dock with a beer after a long week. The condo complex, Harborview Estates, was one of those upscale communities that attracted a particular type of resident. Most were retirees or second home owners who wanted lake access without maintaining a full house. The Homeowners Association was notorious for being strict about rules, which I had actually appreciated when I moved in 2 years ago. I figured strict rules meant well-maintained property and respectful neighbors. I was wrong about that last part. When I pulled into my parking spot that Tuesday afternoon in late April, the sun was still high enough that I had a clear view down to the dock area. My trip to Chicago had been cut short because the client meeting got moved up, which meant I was home 3 days earlier than planned. I grabbed my laptop bag and was heading toward my unit when something caught my eye. There was a white pontoon boat in my slip, a fairly new one with blue striping and way too many fishing rod holders for anyone to actually use. My first thought was that maybe the dock master had temporarily moved it there for some maintenance reason. We had a guy named Rick who managed the marina area, and he was usually pretty good about communication, but maybe something had come up. I changed direction and walked down the wooden pathway toward the docks, my shoes making hollow sounds on the weathered planks. As I got closer, I could see the boat more clearly. It was definitely not a temporary situation. There were personal items all over it, cushions, a cooler, fishing gear organized like someone used this space regularly. My boat, a modest 17-foot center console that I used for base fishing, was nowhere to be seen. "Excuse me, can I help you?" a voice called out. I turned to see a woman in her mid-50s walking toward me with the kind of purposeful stride that suggested she was coming to confront me, not the other way around. She had blonde hair with gray roots showing, wore a visor and oversized sunglasses, and carried herself with an air of authority that immediately set off warning bells in my head. "I was about to ask you the same thing," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "That's my dock space." "I don't think so," she said, stopping a few feet away and crossing her arms. "This is slip 7 and I've been using it for the past several months. If there was a problem, someone would have said something. I'm James Zhu. I own Unit 304. That slip is deeded to my property. I've been out of town for work, but that's definitely my space." Her expression shifted from confrontational to dismissive. "Well, it was just sitting empty. I'm Brenda Harrison on the HOA board, and we had a meeting about underutilized dock spaces. Since you weren't using it, I claimed it for community use." I felt my jaw tighten. "Community use meaning your personal use." "I'm part of the community," Brenda said with a shrug. "Look, you're clearly not here very often. You weren't using the space, so why does it matter?" "Because I paid for it. It's part of my property deed." "That's not how HOAs work," she said, and I could hear the condescension dripping from her voice. "When you bought here, you agreed to abide by HOA rules and decisions. The board can reallocate unused resources." I pulled out my phone. "I'd like to see the meeting minutes where this was discussed and voted on." Brenda's face flushed slightly. "That's privileged board information. It's actually public information for homeowners, I countered. And even if the board wanted to reallocate dock space, you'd need to give proper notice and hold a vote. You can't just decide something affects my property without involving me. You weren't here to involve, she snapped. That's what certified mail is for. I kept my voice level, but I was getting increasingly angry. Where's my boat? How should I know? It wasn't here when I moved mine in. When was that? She waved a hand vaguely. January, maybe. Early February. So you moved my boat without permission and took over my dock space. I didn't move anything. Like I said, there was no boat there. Maybe you should keep better track of your property. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. I need you to move your boat out of my slip today. I don't think so, Brenda said, her voice taking on a sharp edge. I've established use of this space. If you have a problem with HOA decisions, you can file a complaint and wait for the next board meeting. That's not until the third Thursday of next month. This isn't an HOA decision. This is you taking my property. It's not your property. It's association property that you have usage rights to, she corrected, like she was teaching a child. And usage rights can be modified by the board when necessary. I looked at her carefully, realizing this was not going to be resolved with a reasonable conversation. I'm going to contact the HOA president and the property manager. In the meantime, I expect your boat moved by end of day tomorrow. Or what? Brenda challenged. Or I'll take appropriate legal action. She actually laughed at that. Good luck with that. I've been on this board for 8 years. I know every rule and bylaw. You're new here, you're never around, and you clearly don't understand how things work. The space is mine now. Deal with it. She turned and walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing on the dock staring at her boat in my slip. I went back to my condo and immediately started making calls. First, I tried Rick, the dock master, but it went to voicemail. Then I called the property management company, Lakeside Property Services, and got transferred around until I reached someone named Monica, who actually seemed to know what she was talking about. Mr. Zhu, let me pull up your file, she said, and I could hear typing in the background. Okay, yes, you have deeded dock space, slip number 7. That's a permanent easement that transferred with your property purchase. Exactly. So can you tell me why there's someone else's boat in it? More typing. I don't show any work orders or authorized moves for that slip. When did this happen? According to the person who's using it, sometime in January or February. She claims to be on the HOA board, Brenda Harrison. There was a long pause. Mrs. Harrison is on the board, yes, but she definitely doesn't have authority to reassign deeded dock spaces. Those are part of your property rights. That's what I told her. She claimed there was a board meeting about underutilized spaces. Even if there was, which I doubt, deeded spaces can't be reassigned without a formal amendment process that would require your signature and probably legal filing with the county. This sounds like a personal decision on her part. So what do I do? I can send someone out tomorrow to assess the situation and send Mrs. Harrison a notice to vacate. In the meantime, I'd recommend documenting everything. Take photos, write down what was said, keep a timeline. If she refuses to move the boat, we may need to involve the police for trespassing. What about my boat? It was there when I left in January. Was it locked to the dock? Yes, with a cable lock through the bow eye. Then someone cut it or unlocked it. That's theft or at minimum unauthorized removal of property. You should file a police report. I thanked Monica and hung up, then immediately went back down to the dock with my phone to take pictures. I documented everything. Brenda's boat in my slip, the empty cable lock that was supposed to be securing my boat, the slip number clearly marked on the dock post. Then I walked along the entire dock checking every other slip. And sure enough, there was my boat in slip 14, which was supposed to be empty because that unit was currently for sale. Someone had definitely moved it. The cable lock was still attached to the bow eye, but it had been cut clean through. This wasn't casual borrowing or a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. I took more photos, then drove to the Lake Norman Police Department substation to file a report. The officer who took my statement, a young guy named Officer Mitchell, seemed sympathetic, but explained that these kinds of disputes usually had to be worked out civilly first. If she refuses to move after being given proper notice, then we can get involved for trespassing, he explained. And the cut lock is concerning, but proving who did it will be tough unless you have security footage. The condo complex has cameras in the parking lot, but I don't think they cover the docks. You could check with your property management. Even if we can't pursue criminal charges, this documentation will help if you end up in civil court. I left the police station feeling frustrated, but at least like I had started the official process. Back at my condo, I spent the evening going through my purchase documents, HOA bylaws, and the property deed. Everything was crystal clear. Slip 7 was deeded to Unit 304, which I owned. There was specific language about how dock spaces were considered real property rights and could not be modified without formal legal process. I also found something interesting in the HOA bylaws. There was a section about board members and conflicts of interest. It specifically stated that board members could not use their position to gain personal benefit or advantage over other homeowners. Using board authority to claim someone else's dock space seemed like a pretty clear violation of that rule. The next morning, I got a call from Monica at the property management company. "Mr. Zhu, I've sent a certified letter to Mrs. Harrison requiring her to remove her boat from slip 7 within 5 business days." I also spoke with the HOA president, Walter Morrison, and he was not aware of any board decision regarding dock space reallocation. He's quite concerned about this situation. So she just made that up. It appears so. Mr. Morrison is calling an emergency board meeting for this Friday to address the issue. You're welcome to attend. I'll be there. One more thing. I reviewed the security footage from the parking lot cameras. They don't show the docks directly, but we can see Mrs. Harrison's vehicle with a boat trailer going in and out several times in late January. We also see your boat on a trailer behind someone's truck in early February, leaving the property. Who was driving? Hard to tell from the angle, but the truck is registered to Brenda Harrison's address. It's her husband's vehicle. So they had stolen my boat, moved it, and taken over my dock space. This was way beyond a simple misunderstanding or overreaching HOA authority. This was actual theft. Can you email me copies of that footage? I can provide it to the police if you'd like to amend your report. Yes, please do that. I called Officer Mitchell back and explained the new evidence. He sounded more interested this time. Okay, that changes things. If we have footage of them moving your boat without permission after cutting your lock, that's unauthorized use of property at minimum, possibly theft. Let me talk to my supervisor about how we want to handle this. The next few days were tense. I went down to the dock Wednesday morning to check on the situation, and Brenda's boat was still there. I saw her at the pool area that afternoon, and she deliberately turned and walked the other way when she saw me coming. That evening, I found a note tucked into my door. It was from Brenda, handwritten on floral stationery. "James, I think we got off on the wrong foot. I've been using that dock space because it was empty and I thought it was available. I'm sure we can work something out. Perhaps you could use slip 14, and I could continue in slip 7 since my boat is already set up there. It would save everyone a lot of trouble. Let me know. Brenda Harrison, The casual tone was infuriating, like she was doing me a favor by suggesting I take a different slip instead of the one I owned. I didn't respond. Friday evening came, and I showed up at the community clubhouse for the HOA board meeting. The room was set up with a long table at the front where 5 board members sat. Walter Morrison, the president, a man in his 70s with white hair and glasses, Brenda Harrison, 2 other women I didn't recognize, and a younger man who looked uncomfortable. About 15 other homeowners were scattered in the audience chairs. Walter called the meeting to order and went through some routine business before getting to what he called dock space concerns. "It's been brought to my attention that there's a dispute about Slip 7, Walter began, looking directly at Brenda. "Mr. Zhu, who owns Unit 304 and has deeded rights to Slip 7, has filed a complaint that his space has been taken over without authorization." "Brenda, can you explain what happened?" Brenda sat up straighter, her expression neutral. "As I explained to Mr. Zhu, the space appeared to be unused. His boat wasn't there, and in trying to be efficient with our limited dock resources, I moved my boat into that slip. I thought it was available for community use." "Did you check the property records or contact the owner?" Walter asked. "I didn't think it was necessary. The slip was empty." "Brenda, you know that dock spaces are deeded property. You can't just claim one because it appears empty." "I'm on the board. I thought I had authority to manage common areas." "Deeded dock slips aren't common areas," one of the other board members interjected, an older woman with short gray hair. "They're private property rights." "Where was Mr. Zhu's boat?" Walter asked. Brenda shrugged. "I have no idea." I stood up. "May I speak?" Walter nodded. "Please." "My boat was locked in Slip 7 when I left for a work trip in early January. When I came back this week, my cable lock had been cut, my boat had been moved to Slip 14, and Mrs. Harrison's boat was in my space. The property management company has security footage showing Mrs. Harrison's vehicles moving boats during the time this happened." There was murmuring in the audience. Brenda's face went red. "That's circumstantial," she said. "My husband moves boats all the time. He helps people out." "Did I ask him to help me?" I countered. "You weren't here to ask." "Exactly. So you took it upon yourself to move my property without permission and take over my dock space." Walter held up a hand. "This is clearly not a simple misunderstanding. Brenda, you need to move your boat out of Slip 7 immediately. Mr. Zhu has deeded rights to that space, and there's no board authority to override that." "This is ridiculous," Brenda said, her voice rising. "He's never here. He doesn't use it. Why should it sit empty when I could be using it?" "Because it's his property," the gray-haired board member said firmly. "This isn't complicated, Brenda." "I'm not moving my boat," Brenda stated flatly. "If he wants it moved, he can go through the proper legal channels." "The proper legal channels are telling you to move it right now," Walter said, his voice taking on an edge I hadn't heard before. "As HOA president, I'm officially directing you to remove your boat from Slip 7 within 24 hours. "And I'm refusing," Brenda shot back. "You can't tell me what to do." "Actually, I can, and if you don't comply, I'll have the boat towed at your expense." Brenda stood up abruptly. "This is harassment. I've been on this board for 8 years, and I've never been treated like this. You're all ganging up on me because you don't like that I'm a strong woman who gets things done." The younger board member, who hadn't spoken yet, finally chimed in. "Brenda, this isn't about gender. This is about you taking someone else's property. Just move the boat." "No," Brenda said firmly. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "This meeting is a sham. I'll see you all in court." She left, and the room was silent for a moment. "Well," Walter said finally, "I think we need to have a longer discussion about board conduct and conflicts of interest. Mr. Zhu, I apologize on behalf of the association. We will resolve this." After the meeting, several homeowners came up to me to express support and share their own stories about Brenda. Apparently, this wasn't her first time overstepping her authority. One couple told me she had tried to fine them for having the wrong color outdoor furniture, even though their furniture matched the approved color list. Another person said Brenda had attempted to ban his teenage daughter from using the pool because she wore a two-piece swimsuit that Brenda deemed inappropriate. She thinks being on the board makes her queen of the neighborhood, one elderly man told me. Most of us just avoid her, but someone needed to stand up to her. Good for you. I went home that night feeling validated but also anxious. Brenda clearly wasn't going to back down easily, and I was starting to realize this could turn into a lengthy legal battle. Saturday morning, I went down to the dock at sunrise. Brenda's boat was still there. I took more photos with timestamps, documenting her continued trespass after being officially ordered by the HOA president to remove it. Around 10 in the morning, I saw Brenda walk down to the dock. She was carrying bags like she was planning to go out on the water. I watched from my balcony as she loaded her boat, started the engine, and pulled out of the slip. She was gone for about 4 hours. When she came back, I went down to meet her at the dock. "You need to move your boat," I said calmly. "I heard you the first 100 times," she replied, not looking at me as she tied up. "My answer hasn't changed. The HOA president officially directed you to vacate this slip. Walter Morrison doesn't scare me. I've been on this board longer than he has. He'll change his tune once I explain the situation properly." "What situation? You stole my dock space." She finally looked at me, and her expression was pure contempt. "You're one of those people who buys property and doesn't even use it. You're never here. You're wasting a valuable resource while people like me, who actually live here full-time and contribute to the community, go without. If anything, I'm being reasonable by suggesting you use a different slip." "I'm using the slip I paid for. You're being selfish." "I'm being selfish. You literally stole my property and you're calling me selfish." "Oh please, so dramatic. I didn't steal anything. Your boat is fine. It's sitting right over there in slip 14. You lost nothing except your precious pride. And my lock that you cut. And the use of my property for 4 months. And my time dealing with this mess you created." She rolled her eyes. "I'm done with this conversation. You want the slip back, sue me. Otherwise, leave me alone." She walked off the dock, and I stood there processing what she had just said. She had essentially admitted to taking my property and was daring me to do something about it. Fine. If that's how she wanted to play it, I could escalate too. I went back to my condo and called a lawyer. After explaining the situation to 3 different attorneys, I found one who specialized in property rights and HOA disputes. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she had an office in Cornelius, just north of the lake. "This is actually pretty straightforward," Patricia told me during our consultation Monday morning. "You have deeded rights, she's trespassing, and she's refused multiple requests to vacate. I can file for an emergency injunction to force removal of her boat, and we can pursue damages for unauthorized use of your property." "How long will that take?" "Emergency injunction hearing could be as soon as this week if the judge considers it urgent. Damages would take longer, probably a few months." "What's this going to cost me?" "My retainer is $3,000 and will bill hourly after that. But honestly, once she gets served with the injunction filing, she'll probably move the boat. Most people don't want to end up in front of a judge for something this clear-cut." I hired Patricia on the spot. By Tuesday afternoon, Brenda had been served with notice of the injunction hearing, scheduled for Thursday morning at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. Wednesday evening, I got a knock on my door. It was Walter Morrison, the HOA president. "James, can we talk?" he asked. I invited him in, and we sat in my living room. "I want you to know the board is taking this seriously," Walter said. "We had an emergency executive session last night, and we voted to suspend Brenda from the board pending resolution of this dispute." "Can you do that?" "According to our bylaws, yes, if a board member engages in conduct that violates the association's rules or brings the board into disrepute." Taking another owner's property definitely qualifies. We also voted to recommend the membership not re-elect her when her term is up next month. "How did she take that news?" Walter grimaced. "Not well. She threatened to sue the entire board, but I think it's an empty threat. She knows she's in the wrong, she just doesn't want to admit it. I appreciate the board's support. I also wanted to apologize personally. Brenda has been difficult for years, but I never thought she'd do something like this. We should have removed her from the board a long time ago." Thursday morning, I met Patricia at the courthouse. The hearing was in a small courtroom with just the judge, a court reporter, Patricia, me, Brenda, and her attorney, a tired-looking man in an ill-fitting suit who kept checking his watch. The judge, a middle-aged woman named Judge Anderson, reviewed the filings quickly. "Mrs. Harrison, you're currently occupying Dock Slip 7 at Harborview Estates, correct?" she asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Brenda said. "And you're aware that Slip 7 is deeded to Mr. Zhu's property?" "Yes, but the slip was unused." "That's not relevant. Do you have any legal right to use Slip 7? Brenda's attorney leaned over and whispered something to her. She pressed her lips together before responding. "No, Your Honor, but I believe there should be a process for reallocating unused resources." "There may be, but that's not what happened here. You simply took over property that belonged to someone else." Judge Anderson looked at the documents in front of her. "I'm granting the emergency injunction." "Mrs. Harrison, you have 48 hours to remove your boat from Slip 7. If you fail to do so, Mr. Zhu is authorized to have it removed and stored at your expense. You're also ordered to pay Mr. Zhu's legal fees for this hearing." "Your Honor, that's not fair," Brenda protested. "What's not fair is taking someone else's property and refusing to return it when asked. 48 hours, Mrs. Harrison. This hearing is concluded." Outside the courtroom, Brenda confronted me in the hallway. "I hope you're happy," she hissed. "You've humiliated me in front of a judge over a stupid dock space you don't even use." "All you had to do was move your boat when I asked," I said. "This isn't over. I'll make your life hell in that complex. Every little violation, every tiny rule you break, I'll be there." "You're suspended from the board," I reminded her, "not forever. And I have friends." She stormed off and Patricia shook her head. "She's going to be a problem, I figured. Document everything. If she harasses you, we can potentially get a restraining order." I went back to work, thinking the worst was over. I was wrong. Friday evening, I went down to check on the dock. Brenda's boat was gone, but when I looked at my slip more carefully, I realized she had damaged it before leaving. The dock cleats were bent. There were scratches gouged into the wooden decking, and the electrical outlet that provided shore power to boats had been smashed. I took photos and called Monica at the property management company. "That's vandalism," she said when I sent her the pictures. "File another police report and send me copies. We'll bill her for the repairs. She's never going to pay. Then we'll put a lien on her condo. She can't sell or refinance without clearing it." I filed the police report Saturday morning. Officer Mitchell responded again, and this time he seemed genuinely angry. "This is getting out of hand," he said, examining the damage. "This is criminal mischief. We can actually charge her for this. Will you?" "I'll submit it to the DA's office, but they'll want to see if she'll settle civilly first. If she refuses or does anything else, They'll probably prosecute. That afternoon, I moved my boat back to slip 7. It felt good to have it in the right place again, even though the damaged dock was a constant reminder of Brenda's vindictiveness. The next few weeks were relatively quiet. I didn't see Brenda around the complex, though her car was often in her parking spot. The HOA held their regular monthly meeting, and membership voted overwhelmingly not to re-elect her to the board. According to Walter, she didn't even show up to the meeting. The property management company sent her a bill for $1,800 to repair the dock damage. She didn't pay it, so they filed a lien against her condo as promised. I thought maybe she had finally accepted defeat and was keeping a low profile. Then in early June, I came home from work to find my boat sitting lower in the water than usual. When I got down to the dock, I realized someone had opened the drain plugs and the bilge was full of water. The automatic bilge pump had kept it from sinking completely, but another few hours and my boat would have gone under. I pulled the plugs, let the water drain, and called the police again. This time, a different officer responded, Officer Davies, and she immediately asked about the history with Brenda. "We've got multiple reports here involving you and Mrs. Harrison," she said, scrolling through her computer. "This looks like escalating harassment. Have you had any contact with her recently?" "No, I've been avoiding her." "Does anyone else have access to your boat?" "Not that I know of. It's locked, but the drain plugs are accessible from outside. I'm going to talk to her. This needs to stop before someone gets hurt or something gets seriously damaged." The next day, I got a call from Officer Davies. "I spoke with Mrs. Harrison. She denies tampering with your boat, says she hasn't been near the docks in weeks. But I made it clear that if anything else happens, we'll be looking at stalking and harassment charges in addition to vandalism and criminal mischief." Did she seem like she got the message? Hard to say. She was very defensive, kept saying you were the one harassing her. Great. Now she was playing the victim. I installed a security camera on my balcony pointed at the dock. It wasn't a perfect angle, but it covered my slip well enough to see if anyone approached my boat. I also bought better locks and a security system for the boat itself that would alert my phone if it detected motion or water intrusion. For about a month, nothing happened. I started to relax, thinking maybe Brenda had finally backed off. I used my boat most weekends, went fishing, enjoyed the lake. It was exactly what I had moved here for. Then in mid-July, everything exploded. I got a notice from the property management company that Brenda had filed a formal complaint against me. According to her complaint, I was harassing her, threatening her safety, and creating a hostile environment in the community. She claimed I had been following her, taking pictures of her, and making threatening statements. She wanted the HOA to fine me and restrict my access to common areas. I called Monica immediately. "This is ridiculous," I said. "I've been avoiding her for months." "I know. We're not taking it seriously. She's filed 3 other complaints in the last month against different people. She's lashing out because she lost her board position." "So what do I do?" "Nothing. We're documenting it, but unless she has actual evidence of harassment, which she doesn't, there's no action to take." But Brenda wasn't done. The next week, I got a letter from an attorney representing Brenda. It was a cease and desist letter ordering me to stop harassing, threatening, and defaming her. It claimed I had been spreading false rumors about her in the community, and that my actions constituted intentional infliction of emotional distress. I forwarded it to Patricia Chen. "This is a slap-suit threat," Patricia explained. "Strategic lawsuit against public participation. She's trying to intimidate you into silence by threatening legal action. The good news is North Carolina has anti-slap statutes." If she actually sues, we can get it dismissed and make her pay your legal fees. So I should ignore it. For now, yes. If she actually files a lawsuit, we'll deal with it then. But this is a bullying tactic, nothing more. I tried to ignore it, but the stress was getting to me. I had moved to this complex for peace and relaxation, and instead I was dealing with constant drama. I started looking at other properties, thinking maybe it would be easier to just move. Then in early August, things took a turn I didn't expect. I got a call from Officer Davies. "Mr. Zhu, I wanted to give you a heads up. We're executing a search warrant at Mrs. Harrison's condo today." "For what?" "I can't go into details, but let's just say your situation with her led us to look into some other complaints. We found some concerning patterns." "What does that mean?" "I'll call you later when I can tell you more." I spent the rest of the day distracted, wondering what was going on. From my balcony, I could see police vehicles at the complex and officers going in and out of a unit on the second floor, which I knew was Brenda's. That evening, Officer Davies called back. "Okay, here's what I can tell you. We executed a search warrant at Mrs. Harrison's residence based on evidence of multiple incidents of vandalism and harassment, not just against you but against several other residents. We found some items that connect her to various incidents, including tools that match the damage to your dock and chemicals that match a substance poured on another resident's car that damaged the paint. She's been doing this to other people, at least 3 others that we know of. Once we started investigating her more seriously, several people came forward. She's been waging a campaign against anyone she perceives as having crossed her. What happens now? We're charging her with multiple counts of criminal mischief, vandalism, trespassing, and harassment. The DA might add more charges after reviewing all the evidence. She'll be arraigned tomorrow." I sat down heavily on my couch. This had escalated way beyond a dispute over a dock space. The next day, the complex was buzzing with gossip. Everyone had heard about Brenda's arrest, and people were sharing stories. It turned out she had been terrorizing residents for years, but most people had just dealt with it quietly or moved away. I was apparently the first person to really push back, which had caused her to escalate to the point where police got seriously involved. Walter Morrison called me that afternoon. "James, I owe you an apology. If we had taken complaints about Brenda more seriously years ago, none of this would have happened. How were you supposed to know she was vandalizing property? We had hints. People complained about her behavior, her aggression, her overstepping boundaries. We just thought she was difficult, not criminal. We should have removed her from the board a long time ago. What's the association doing now? We're consulting with our attorney about our options. Brenda's behavior has created liability for the HOA. We may need to pursue action to remove her from the community entirely." "Can you do that?" "It's complicated, but if her criminal behavior is disrupting the community and creating a safety hazard, we may have grounds to force a sale of her unit. It's in our governing documents as a last resort for residents who violate community standards in extreme ways." A week later, I got a call from the district attorney's office. A prosecutor named Sarah Williams wanted to meet with me to discuss the charges against Brenda. We met at a coffee shop in Davidson, and Sarah laid out the case they were building. Mrs. Harrison is being charged with 8 counts of criminal mischief, 4 counts of vandalism, 2 counts of trespassing, and 2 counts of stalking. Your situation is the most well-documented, which is why your testimony will be important. What's she facing if convicted? It depends. Some of these are misdemeanors, some are low-level felonies depending on the dollar amount of damage. She could be looking at fines, probation, possibly jail time for the felonies, and likely a restraining order preventing contact with the victims. Is she going to take a plea deal? Her attorney is trying to negotiate one, but she's not being cooperative. She still maintains she's the victim in all this. The case wound through the court system over the next few months. Brenda pleaded not guilty to all charges, which meant it was going to trial. Her attorney tried multiple times to get the charges dismissed, but the evidence was too strong. Meanwhile, the HOA moved forward with their own action. In September, they held a special meeting and voted to begin eviction proceedings against Brenda under the provision in the governing documents about residents whose behavior created a material threat to the community. It required a 2/3 vote of the membership, and it passed with over 85% approval. Brenda fought that too, hiring a lawyer to challenge the eviction. But the combination of criminal charges, documented harassment of multiple residents, and violation of community rules made the case against her overwhelming. The criminal trial was held in November. I testified about the dock space dispute, the vandalism, the boat damage, and the ongoing harassment. Other residents testified about their experiences. The woman whose car Brenda had damaged with acid, the couple whose outdoor furniture Brenda had destroyed, the man whose mail Brenda had been stealing and shredding. The evidence was damning. Police had found proof of all of it in Brenda's condo. The tools, the chemicals, even photographs she had taken of her victims that she had been using to track their movements. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing was 2 weeks later. The judge was not sympathetic. Mrs. Harrison, you engaged in a prolonged campaign of harassment and vandalism against your neighbors. You used your position on the HOA board to target people you disagreed with, and when that wasn't enough, you escalated to criminal behavior. You've shown no remorse and no acceptance of responsibility. This court takes these offenses seriously. She sentenced Brenda to 3 years in prison, with all but 6 months suspended, meaning she'd serve 6 months and then be on probation. She was also ordered to pay restitution to all the victims, totaling over $15,000, and was prohibited from having any contact with any Harborview Estates residents. The civil eviction case concluded a month later. The judge ruled that Brenda's criminal conviction provided sufficient grounds for eviction under the HOA's governing documents. She was given 60 days to sell her condo or face forced sale by the association. Brenda's husband, who had been mostly silent through the whole ordeal, filed for divorce. Apparently, he had no idea what she had been doing and was humiliated by the whole situation. He moved out of the complex immediately. Brenda ended up serving her 6 months, and when she was released, her condo had been sold by the association to cover her liens and legal fees. Whatever equity she had left went to restitution payments and her own legal bills. I heard through the community grapevine that she moved somewhere out of state to live with a sister. The restraining order meant she couldn't come back to the complex anyway. Life at Harborview Estates slowly returned to normal. The HOA elected a new board with better oversight and clearer rules about board conduct. The property management company implemented new security measures, including cameras covering the dock areas. I kept my condo and my dock space. Some of the other residents who had been victimized by Brenda came by to thank me for standing up to her. They said if I hadn't pushed back so hard, she probably would have kept getting away with it. On a sunny Saturday morning in March, almost a year after I had first discovered Brenda's boat in my slip, I took my boat out early to go fishing. The water was still cold, but the bass were starting to move into the shallows for spawning, and it was perfect weather. I anchored in a quiet cove and spent a few hours casting and thinking about everything that had happened. It had been exhausting and stressful, but I had learned something important. Sometimes standing up for yourself, even when it's difficult and uncomfortable, is the only way to stop someone who's determined to take advantage. If I had just accepted Brenda's theft of my dock space, or moved to a different slip, or left the complex entirely, she would have continued to terrorize other residents. Instead, by holding firm on my property rights and documenting everything, I had helped bring down someone who had been making life miserable for dozens of people. The legal system had worked the way it was supposed to. The police had investigated thoroughly, the DA had prosecuted appropriately, and the courts had delivered justice. The HOA had also stepped up once they understood the severity of the situation. When I got back to the dock that afternoon, a couple of neighbors were sitting on their boats enjoying the warm weather. They waved and asked how the fishing had been. We chatted for a while about the lake, about the upcoming summer season, about normal things. That's what I had wanted when I bought this place. A peaceful spot to enjoy the water, friendly neighbors, a community where people respected each other. It had taken a fight to get there, but it was worth it. I secured my boat in slip 7, my slip, and walked back to my condo feeling content. The nightmare with Brenda was over. The dock space was mine, just as it had always been, and I had helped make Harborview Estates a better place for everyone who lived there. Sometimes doing the right thing is hard. Sometimes it means lawyers and police reports and court appearances and months of stress. But sometimes it's exactly what needs to happen. Brenda Harrison had thought she could use her HOA position to bully people and take what she wanted. She had been wrong. The whole experience had taught me something about community living. HOAs can be great when they are run by people with integrity, who genuinely want to maintain property values and quality of life. But they can also be vehicles for petty tyrants who use their positions to settle scores and push people around. The key is having strong bylaws, active membership participation, and willingness to hold board members accountable when they abuse their power. I started attending HOA meetings regularly after that, not because I particularly enjoyed them, but because I understood the importance of oversight. Several other residents did the same. The new board was much more transparent, much more responsive to homeowner concerns, and much more careful about following proper procedures. They also implemented new rules specifically designed to prevent what had happened with Brenda. Board members now had to sign ethics agreements. Any action affecting individual property rights required full board vote with proper notice. Conflicts of interest had to be disclosed, and board members had to recuse themselves from votes where they had personal interest. It seemed like common sense, but apparently it needed to be spelled out explicitly. I also became friendly with some of the other residents who had been Brenda's victims. There was something bonding about having gone through that shared experience. We'd occasionally have dinner together or meet up on the lake, and sometimes we'd talk about the whole situation, processing it together. One of them, a retired teacher named Linda who lived in Unit 401, told me she had been planning to move because of Brenda's harassment. "You saved me from having to uproot my life," she said. "I love this place, I love the lake, I love my condo, but she was making it unbearable. When you stood up to her, it gave the rest of us courage to come forward too." That meant a lot to me. I hadn't been trying to be a hero or make a statement. I just wanted my dock space back. But the ripple effects had helped a lot of people. The property management company also made changes. Monica, who had been helpful throughout the whole ordeal, told me they had reviewed their policies across all the properties they managed. They implemented better systems for tracking complaints, responding to disputes, and escalating issues when necessary. "Your situation was a wake-up call," she said. We should have intervened much sooner when Brenda started overstepping. We didn't want to get involved in what we thought was a personality conflict, but we should have recognized it was more than that. As the months went by, the story of Brenda Harrison became something of a cautionary tale in the Lake Norman condo community. Other HOAs heard about what had happened and started reviewing their own rules and board conduct. A few other problem board members quietly resigned or chose not to run for re-election, apparently not wanting to face similar scrutiny. I ran into Walter Morrison at the grocery store one day, and he told me the Harborview HOA had been approached by other associations asking for advice on preventing board abuse. "You've created a movement," he joked. "The Great Lake Norman HOA reform of 2026. It was funny, but also kind of true. Sometimes it takes one egregious case to shine a light on systemic problems. By late spring, I felt like I could finally fully relax and enjoy my home. The dock was repaired and looked great. My boat was in perfect condition. The weather was warming up and the lake was beautiful. I was taking the boat out 2 or 3 times a week, fishing in the mornings before work, cruising in the evenings after. One Saturday in May, I was at the dock washing my boat when a young couple walked up. They introduced themselves as the new owners of Brenda's old unit. "We heard about what happened with the previous owner," the husband said. "Our real estate agent told us the whole story. We just wanted to say we appreciate that you stood up to her. We're excited to be part of a community that takes that kind of behavior seriously." "Welcome to Harborview," I said. "You're going to love it here." And they would, because it was a great place to live now. The community was friendly, the property was well maintained, and the HOA functioned properly. That's what it was supposed to be like. I finished washing my boat and sat on the dock for a while as the sun started to set, casting orange and pink reflections across the water. A few other residents were out on their boats, coming back from afternoon excursions. Someone was grilling on their balcony, and the smell of barbecue drifted on the breeze. Kids were playing in the pool area, their laughter carrying across the complex. It was peaceful. It was exactly what I had wanted when I bought this place. The whole experience with Brenda had been awful while it was happening, but looking back, I didn't regret how I had handled it. I had stood my ground, followed proper procedures, documented everything, and let the system work. I hadn't gotten angry or escalated unnecessarily, but I also hadn't backed down when I was clearly in the right, and the outcome had been justice. Brenda had faced real consequences for her actions. She had lost her board position, her home, her freedom for a time, and her reputation. Other people she might have victimized in the future were protected. The community was better off. Sometimes the legal system works slowly, and sometimes standing up for your rights is exhausting and expensive and time-consuming. But sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's necessary. I packed up my cleaning supplies and headed back to my condo, stopping to chat with a few neighbors along the way. That's what community was supposed to be. People treating each other with respect, following the rules, and taking care of shared spaces. The nightmare of fighting with a HOA board member who thought her position gave her the right to steal property and harass residents was over. Life at Harborview Estates was good. As I unlocked my door and went inside, I felt genuinely grateful for how things had turned out. Yes, it had been a difficult year. Yes, I had spent thousands of dollars on lawyers and dealt with months of stress. Yes, I had been forced to confront someone who seemed determined to make my life miserable. But I had won. More importantly, the community had won, and that made all the difference. I made myself dinner, poured a glass of wine, and sat on my balcony overlooking the lake as the last light faded from the sky. Tomorrow I'd take the boat out early and try to catch some bass. Maybe I'd invite a few neighbors along. Life was good. And my dock space, slip number 7, was exactly where I had left it, waiting for me whenever I wanted to use it. Because it was mine, legally and properly, just as it should be. The story of Brenda Harrison trying to use my dock space for free and ending up convicted of trespassing and evicted from her condo had come to a close. Justice had been served, lessons had been learned, and life had moved on. Sometimes standing up for what's right is hard. Sometimes it means fighting battles you'd rather avoid. But sometimes those battles need to be fought. And when they are over, when the dust settles and justice prevails, the victory is sweet. I raised my glass in a silent toast to property rights, to proper HOA governance, and to communities where people treat each other with respect. Then I finished my wine and went to bed, already looking forward to another beautiful day on Lake Norman.